The fact is that there is something going on which we have to identify. It is an attempt in our societies to make Islam, and in particular the founder Islam, immune from any criticism. It cannot be allowed to continue.
Islam is anything but the religion of peace. This is how Douglas Murray truly feels about it. Even though Murray has been an atheist for a long time, he hasn't ever stepped back from criticizing the hypocrisies and negatives of various religions. However, his distaste for Islam is much more prominent than for Christianity, in which he once believed. Considering what is happening throughout Europe, and how European culture is being destroyed by Islam and illegal migrants, this isn't surprising. But what really makes him so angry about Islam, even though Christianity once had a dark past? Let's take a look.
History of Christianity, more bloody or less bloody if Jesus was more like Muhammad? I think everyone would say likely to be more bloody.
Douglas Murray couldn't stop but compare the stark differences in Christianity and Islamic teachings, even though they both are Abrahamic religions.
The greatest moments in Christian scripture, but the moment when Jesus has brought to him the woman who was caught in adultery.
Murray has repeatedly highlighted the shocking intolerance of Islam towards sins, women, and freedom of speech, including the freedom to criticize their own religion or religious leaders.
We do have a problem. We have a problem when the failures of Islam throughout the world, the failures of all Islamic societies, come here into Britain. Their intolerance of freedom of conscience, their intolerance of apostates, their intolerance of freedom of expression and freedom of speech.
He draws a stark comparison with the Bible. When a woman was caught in adultery, the crowd wanted to stone her for her sin, but Jesus proposed a condition. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. In a similar situation, when a woman was brought before Muhammad for the same reason, she was ordered to be stoned.
And what does Jesus say when the crowd wanted to stone her for her sins? He says, "He who is without sin cast the first stone."
Considering their regressive thoughts and values have not changed much since then, it doesn't come as a surprise. But let's not forget how these very Muslim immigrants have left their Islamic countries to a majority Christian country for a better life and freedom of speech and better rights.
Certainly, Muslims coming to live in Britain and in Western Europe enjoy more rights and better rights, among them freedom of worship, than they do in any Islamic country in the earth here today.
In another interview with Al Jazeera regarding the Charlie Hebdo incident in France, where many cartoonists were shot down, Murray points out that in countries where the majority of the population does not follow Islam, Muslims cannot expect that others will not criticize or satirize their religion, and that only Muslims are so intolerant. They want us to refrain everyone else from exercising their freedom of speech only when it comes to Islam. How ridiculous is that?
What is going on at the moment worldwide, and particularly in Europe, is an attempt to shut down any and all criticism of Islam, one religion alone.
On the other hand, he highlights how Christianity and its followers have shown tolerance towards the same Charlie Hebdo cartoons, despite being mocked numerous times.
One religion alone. I'll hold up for a moment. Don't worry, it's not a cartoon of Muhammad. You don't have to get scared. This is the Christmas edition of Private Eye.
Not a single Christian went to their office and sought vengeance, nor did they attempt to harm anyone over the cartoons criticizing Christianity. Only the Muslims did. Shouldn't this be a wake-up call? Today it was them, tomorrow it could be you or me.
Anyone had gone into Private Eye's offices yesterday and massacred the staff because of it, in the name of Christianity or Jesus. I think that not only would all of the papers today have been a lot more robust, they would have shown, at the very least, shown this image to show what the person who did the killing was so irate about.
Murray also argues that in a secular, democratic society, freedom of speech is a fundamental right that allows for the criticism of all ideas, including religious ones, and all Christian countries have provided it without fail. This principle is enshrined in the laws and values of countries like the UK and France, which have a long tradition of secularism and the separation of church and state. However, none of the Muslim states have such a thing.
However, in countries like Britain and France, most of us are not Muslims, and we do not believe in Muhammad as the founder of any faith that we follow. People are Christians, atheists, all sorts of things.
Murray's statement reflects a common debate about the balance between respecting religious sensitivities and upholding the right to free expression. He thinks that Islam doesn't want itself to be criticized, and that Islam wants to be immune to criticism. We cannot let that happen.
It is an attempt in our societies to make Islam, and in particular the founder Islam, immune from any criticism. It cannot be allowed to continue.
Douglas Murray further highlights that cartoonists are free to satirize Christianity without consequence, yet when they poke fun at Islam, there's a significant backlash.
Avoid censorship in so many levels. We go through censorship in so many levels, social censorship, because of the socio-religious factors in the region.
This is a great reminder that Islam is not tolerant towards anyone who criticizes them and can never compare to the mostly peaceful nature of Christianity. Islam, Murray explains, is about submission to Allah, which he suggests is one reason for the state of the Muslim world today. Conversely, the Christian world has been shaped by the legacy of Christianity, from which the concept of rights originates. This is recognized by the framers of the European Constitution, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and the founding fathers of the United States. The idea that all men are created equal by God and that despite our differences, we are all equal in the eyes of the Creator is a Judeo-Christian principle.
But all of these ideas, like the dignity of the individual, these come from the Judeo-Christian tradition.
Murray emphasizes that these ideas, the dignity of the individual, for example, stem from the Judeo-Christian tradition. Without them, he suggests, the West would be more like China or the Islamic world, or any other place shaped by a different historical tradition. Murray himself, while not a believer, values Christianity for its emphasis on justice, which he sees as essential to love. Without these beliefs, the West is bound for destruction and disaster.
That's just narrow materialism.
There's this idea that Western civilization is like a cut flower and you can look at it and enjoy it, but it's going to die.
In another debate about Western values, Murray points out how free we are in a Western society. He quotes an incident where he asked a student who started protesting because he said something about Islam and its intolerance.
And started protesting because I had said that an Islamist government was of itself a bad thing, which I think it is.
Murray poses a provocative question. If you had to choose, which Islamic nation would you choose to live in? This inquiry may feel personal, but it shows the importance of addressing the tension between advocating for a religion that doesn't uphold the principles of a free society while residing in a country that values freedom. There's no doubt that you wouldn't hesitate to choose any Christian country to live in, but you would definitely hesitate to choose an Islamic country where you would feel safe.
Name me one Islamist government state that you would want to live in. And this is a serious question, ladies and gentlemen.
In another debate titled Islam is a Religion of Peace on Intelligence Squared, held in New York in 2010, the stage heated up when Douglas Murray entered. Murray, without any reluctance, stated that it was after studying the Quran that he became an atheist. He declared, "Muhammad made me an atheist."
But if the motion we had here tonight was Christianity is a religion of peace, we get to the Q&A perhaps even before, and somebody would say, if the other side were arguing for that, somebody would say, what about the Crusades? What about that?
He then proceeds to ask a question. What if the debate were titled Christianity, the Religion of Peace? How would the audience's opinions differ? Would they sit as peacefully as they are now, listening to arguments about Islam being the religion of peace? Or would they raise questions about the Crusades or some recent action by a pastor, attempting to tarnish its reputation? But that's not all. He points out that when a Muslim individual does something wrong, people should not blame their religion, Islam. Yet when someone who is Christian or Jewish does something wrong, it automatically becomes a reflection on their religion.
Where nothing that anyone does whilst being Muslim is any responsibility of Islam's. Yet anything anyone does whilst being a Christian or a Jew is responsibility of all Christians, all Jews.
Murray says Islam, the Quran, and other Islamic sources contain problematic elements alongside peaceful teachings. He believes the violent passages hold significant weight. He says, Islam, Quran, and so on is bad. and how the peaceful verses get overshadowed by the hateful verses, which are also numerous in number.
Then you've got the life of Muhammad. Again, a bad man. A very bad man, it has to be said. Not a great role model, if you look at it.
Then he goes on to talk about Muhammad, who he believes was a bad man. Murray then criticizes the Prophet Muhammad, questioning his role model status. He cites examples like marrying a young girl and participating in warfare as evidence against Muhammad's character. These actions, Murray suggests, contradict a peaceful message.
Child brides, abuses a small girl, multiple wives, himself a warrior, himself a war criminal, himself beheads Jews. This, I would have thought, would be a signal of not great peacefulness.
Murray then argues that Sharia law, as he understands it, would be incompatible with Western legal systems. He believes no Western country would want to adopt it, and that no one would want to be subject to such laws.
Tradition of the Sharia, again, not great peacefulness. Still no schools of Sharia that people in this hall would want to submit to. And thirdly, what Muslims do now, thankfully, there is some hope in that one.
Murray points out that nobody has succeeded in reforming Islam either. Many tried to do so, but they were wiped out by these very extremists. He says that Islam is many things, but to call it a religion of peace would be an overstatement, complete nonsense even. He also states that to say that Islam is a religion of peace is to say something based entirely on hope. It's to elevate a hope into truth. According to him, history has already taught many times that it is a bad thing to do.
I've been very struck, for instance, by not a large number of people, a relatively small number of people, but people I think of as being very intelligent thinking people who have, for instance, converted to Catholicism.
But that's not all. Murray also points out how the influx of illegal as well as legal immigrants from Muslim countries has affected the culture of Europe, which is predominantly Christian. He calls it the destruction of Europe and European culture. He is fed up with the state of Europe and doesn't want them to come here anymore.
I don't want them to live here. I don't want them here. They came under false pretenses. Many of them came illegally and continue to come illegally.
Here's food for thought. Can a Christian go to an Islamic country and ask for the same rights as Muslims? Never. That would lead to dangerous consequences. Once again, Islamic intolerance and exceptionalism are at their peak. Murray, however, points out how people are converting back to Christianity, the phenomenon of highly intelligent and thoughtful individuals converting to Catholicism, specifically to the more traditional forms of the faith, such as attending the Tridentine Mass.
Gone towards that, and what has struck me most is that they have gone to the most traditional form of that faith. I'm talking about people who've gone into Tridentine Mass attending Catholicism.
While Islam is about punishing sinners and committing war crimes backed by the words of their war criminal prophet, Murray reflects on the missionary aspect of Christianity, which is contrary to Islam, emphasizing Jesus' example of engaging with sinners and breaking social taboos to connect with people. Douglas Murray believes that Islamic immigrants have betrayed their own hosts shamelessly.
These people came into our house. Many of them broke into our house illegally. Many of them were never wanted here.
Indeed, Islam cannot compare to Christianity, as Jesus was all about peace and forgiveness, while Muhammad was all about vengeance and sacrifice. They have made the Western world insufferable, and nobody with a sound mind can deny that.
These two ideas, I'm not sure there is very much compromise for Europe. It is not Europe that has let down its Muslims, but the Muslims of Europe that have let down Europe.